When my sister stood up in the middle of my housewarming party and announced, without even looking at me, that she and her family would be moving into my dream home, my stomach dropped, and the champagne glass almost slipped right from my shaking hand. The chatter instantly faded, replaced by the harsh scrape of her chair pushing back against my pristine hardwood floor. All eyes swung from her defiant expression to mine, confused and curious, hungry for drama. My name is Erica Bennett, and I'd spent the past 15 years clawing my way up from nothing, sacrificing everything just to prove myself worthy, first to my family, and then, finally, to myself. I'd dreamed of this exact moment for years, picturing the pride and accomplishment I'd feel as I stood in front of friends and family in my perfect 5-bedroom colonial outside Boston. Instead, Trish had turned it into yet another humiliation, another moment to remind me that no matter how far I'd climbed, I'd never escape her shadow. "You heard right," Trish said, her voice dripping with a weirdly calm entitlement. "We're moving in with Erica. She has all this space, after all. Family helps family, right?" A murmur swept through my guests, friends, co-workers, neighbors, all watching the chaos unfold in real time. My cheeks burned as I tried to force words out, but my throat closed tight, strangling any response. I met my mom's eyes across the table, searching desperately for support, but she only smiled brightly, nodding along with Trish, as if this insane, humiliating ambush had been planned all along. I felt my pulse pound in my temples. How could my sister, who'd spent years dismissing my successes, suddenly feel entitled to my hard-earned space? And worse, how was my mother actually encouraging it? My perfect house, my hard-earned sanctuary, now felt like it belonged to everyone but me. Years of overlooked accomplishments and unspoken resentment swirled into a single thought. I was still invisible, still second best to Trish's endless dramas. Something inside me hardened. This was one humiliation I wouldn't accept quietly. Before I share exactly how I fought back against my family's cruelest betrayal yet, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever overcome something for your family, because trust me, you have no idea what they'll do once they find out the truth. Growing up, invisibility was normal to me. Every family has roles. Trish was always the center of attention, and I was the quiet one in the background, easy to overlook. My successes were brushed aside as unnecessary, even inconvenient. But Trish's smallest achievements were met with fanfare, celebrations, and praise. I remember vividly the night I won the state science fair in 10th grade. It was the first real victory I'd ever experienced, and I raced home, clutching my trophy tightly, my heart practically bursting with excitement. But when I opened the door, balloons and streamers greeted me, only they weren't for me. It turned out that exact night, Trish had finally passed her driving test after 4 attempts. Mom rushed over, smiling ear to ear, pulling me aside just long enough to whisper, "Your sister's finally done it. Make sure you congratulate her, she needs your support." I tried to show Mom my trophy, but her gaze slid past it, distracted. "That's nice, Erica," she murmured absently, eyes already moving back toward Trish, who was recounting every detail of her driving test to an adoring audience of aunts, cousins, and neighbors. It hurt then, but it was a familiar kind of hurt. The type I'd learned to swallow quietly. After all, I was the one who could handle disappointment. Trish apparently needed all the praise she could get. That pattern never changed. When Trish dropped out of college after getting pregnant at 21, my parents threw her an extravagant baby shower and praised her endlessly for making a brave decision. Meanwhile, I graduated top of my class at MIT and received nothing but a quick phone call. "Congratulations, dear. We wish we could have been there," but Trish was feeling nauseous. By my late 20s, I was working tirelessly as a software developer, regularly clocking 80-hour weeks. But my family rarely asked about my work, other than to complain that I missed too many Sunday dinners. Trish, by contrast, seemed to do no wrong. When she started her online jewelry business, essentially beads and charms sold to neighbors, my parents treated her like she'd founded Apple. "She's an entrepreneur, Erica," my mom told me once, eyes filled with admiration. "You should really learn something from her." Yet, through it all, I kept going, telling myself their approval wasn't necessary, even though I craved it more deeply than I'd admit. Instead, I channeled that hunger into drive, turning every slight into fuel. Each promotion at work was a silent, bitter victory, every raise a proof of my worth, every dollar saved another brick in the wall I was quietly building, brick by brick, paycheck by paycheck. And now, with my dream house finally purchased, after years of sacrifice and painstaking planning, it was supposed to be my moment, the undeniable proof of success even my family couldn't dismiss. But here stood Trish again, poised to erase everything I'd accomplished with one swift announcement. Standing in my elegant living room, surrounded by shocked colleagues and sympathetic friends, I could feel my blood boiling beneath the surface. Trish smiled smugly, clearly assuming that, like always, I'd simply step aside. But she'd miscalculated something this time. How much it meant to me, how tired I was of being invisible, how desperate I was for acknowledgement, respect, or at least basic decency. As she glanced around confidently, already mentally redecorating my carefully chosen rooms, I made a decision. This time would be different. This time I'd fight back, and it would be a fight none of them ever expected. The truth is, I didn't build my success just to spite my family. But I won't lie, every time my parents and Trish ignored my accomplishments, something inside me burned brighter, pushing me further. My secret wasn't just that I'd worked hard, it was how determined I was to create something undeniable, something my family couldn't casually dismiss. My big breakthrough came 6 years earlier. I was working late one night, hunched over my desk, when an idea struck. I saw clearly how the company's outdated software could be transformed into something sleek, revolutionary even. I sketched it out on a napkin, half believing it was crazy. But the next day, my boss stared at that sketch, speechless. "You realize what you've done here, Erica?" he asked. "You just changed everything." That moment was my turning point. Within months, I was leading a major development project, managing teams, making decisions I'd never imagined myself brave enough to handle. Over the next few years, my career soared. Promotions came quickly, almost too quickly, leaving me dizzy with success and responsibility. Yet every time I called home to share my news, the response was always the same: muted, polite, slightly bewildered that I'd called at all. "You're working too hard, dear," my mom would sigh, unimpressed. "You should come home and relax with family instead of chasing promotions." Meanwhile, Trish's life became a constant swirl of self-inflicted drama and pity. Her jewelry business flopped, replaced by attempts at selling makeup, then organic smoothies. Each failure brought new attention, new sympathy, and new encouragement. "At least she's trying," my dad would say warmly, patting her shoulder as though she deserved a medal for simply getting out of bed each morning. It stung every time, but each dismissive comment only hardened my resolve. While my family celebrated mediocrity, I quietly stacked my victories higher and higher, knowing someday they'd have no choice but to acknowledge me. And it finally happened, the day I became Chief Technology Officer at one of Boston's top tech firms. I was the youngest woman ever to hold that position, something colleagues praised as groundbreaking. It was surreal and thrilling, yet, somehow, still bittersweet. Because even as congratulations poured in from coworkers and friends, my family barely reacted. When I called home with the news, Mom simply said, "CTO, that's nice, Erica. Did you know Trish is thinking of getting into yoga instructing now?" It was so absurd I almost laughed. That's when I realized something crucial. No matter what I achieved, it would never be enough for them. My value had to come from myself, not my family's approval. So I quietly focused inward. I kept saving, planning, building something entirely my own, a fortress of independence. The beautiful colonial house wasn't just my dream, it was my statement, proof I'd succeeded despite their constant doubts. I poured every spare moment into creating it, picking the perfect furnishings, designing the ideal home office, a sanctuary where I'd feel respected and in control. When the deal finally closed, I sat alone in my car outside the realtor's office, overwhelmed. It was the culmination of everything I'd endured, the late nights, skipped vacations, and endless criticisms. I'd done it. Alone. But now, standing frozen in my own living room, facing my sister's entitled glare and my mother's complicit silence, I understood this wasn't just a fight over my house. It was a battle for dignity and respect, a reckoning that had been building for decades. They assumed I'd yield, just like always, quietly stepping aside to avoid conflict. But this time, they were wrong. Because for once, I'd created something I refused to surrender. The night before the housewarming, sleep was impossible. My mind raced relentlessly through scenarios of how things could unfold, playing out every awkward conversation, every forced smile, every possible humiliation. Part of me even considered canceling entirely, but that felt too much like letting them win again, like surrendering before the battle had even begun. So instead I spent hours obsessively perfecting the details. Flowers arranged just so, catering double-checked. The entire home staged like a magazine shoot. If I couldn't have my family's approval, I would at least have undeniable proof of my success. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from Trish. "Can't wait to see the house. Girls so excited. Hope you don't mind us bringing their dog, Soxo." I stared at the screen, stunned by her casual presumption. The dog, an unruly slobbering beast, had never been part of the invitation. Yet, typical Trish, assuming boundaries simply didn't apply to her. Annoyance flared through me. How could she still act like my life, my achievements were just casual conveniences for her family? But rather than start another fight, I replied tersely, "Fine, see you tomorrow." The morning of the party felt surreal. I walked through the silent, beautifully staged rooms, anxiety rising with every ticking minute. This was supposed to be my proudest moment, but dread pooled heavy in my stomach. My sanctuary, meticulously crafted as a symbol of independence, now felt dangerously fragile, vulnerable to judgment, criticism, or worse, mockery. When the doorbell rang at 5, I pasted on a bright smile and opened it to my first guests, colleagues from work who gasped appreciatively at the grandeur of the house. Their compliments buoyed me briefly, giving me a flash of the validation I desperately craved from my family. As more people arrived, laughter and conversation filled my home, easing the knot in my chest. Maybe tonight could still be salvaged. Maybe my family wouldn't ruin everything after all. Then Trish arrived, nearly an hour late, marching in with Matt, her 4 noisy daughters, and of course the dreaded dog. Unleashed, muddy paws immediately tracking dirt onto my pristine floors. "Sorry we're late," Trish exclaimed, without a shred of genuine apology. "Girls couldn't find matching shoes. You know how it is." Her eyes flicked dismissively over the carefully chosen decor. "Fancy, Erica? A bit excessive, isn't it?" Heat rushed to my cheeks, embarrassment warring with anger. But I forced a strained smile, determined not to show weakness. "I'm glad you could make it, Trish." "Oh, I wouldn't miss this," she replied with a strange, secretive smile. "Especially tonight." Her tone sent chills down my spine. Before I could respond, my mother stepped forward, beaming proudly at Trish, not me. "So thoughtful of you, Erica, having your sister and the girls stay here with all this space." My heart skipped. "What are you talking about, Mom?" She looked confused. "Well, Trish told us how generously you offered them a place here. I was honestly surprised, but proud you finally realized family comes first." Panic surged through me, icy and swift. My gaze shot to Trish, who avoided my eyes, fiddling innocently with her purse. She'd deliberately planted this idea, weaving a lie that made her look sympathetic and me trapped. This wasn't spontaneous, it was a carefully planned ambush. "You know," Trish announced suddenly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Matt and I are struggling right now, we're losing the house. But Erica insisted we move in here, isn't she amazing?" All eyes turned toward me, full of surprise and admiration, except those who truly knew me, who immediately looked suspicious and confused. My face burned with humiliation. This wasn't just awkward, it was betrayal at its cruelest, turning my accomplishment into her gain, my independence into a weapon against me. I stood frozen, the pressure to agree overwhelming, while inside, rage ignited. I'd spent my entire life bending to Trish's manipulation, silently accepting my parents' neglect. But tonight, I knew something would change. Trish had finally pushed too far. Tonight I'd finally fight back, and she'd regret ever underestimating me again. An awful silence fell over the room, broken only by the dog's frantic scratching against my freshly painted wall. My carefully planned party now felt like a hostage situation, with everyone's eyes fixed anxiously on me, waiting for a response. I forced myself to speak calmly, even as anger scorched my throat. "Trish, we never discussed this." She laughed softly, casting an indulgent glance at our mother, who nodded encouragingly. "Oh, Erica," she said, her voice dripping with patronizing sweetness. "Don't be modest. Mom and Dad always taught us family comes first. You wouldn't turn your nieces away, would you?" The murmurs of approval from family friends felt like knives in my back. This was exactly how Trish operated, expertly turning every moment to her advantage, leaving me cornered and alone. I glanced desperately toward Matt, who stared at the floor, shoulders slumped, clearly mortified by his wife's performance but unwilling, or unable, to contradict her. Of course she wouldn't. My mother chimed in, smiling indulgently. Erica's always had more space than she knows what to do with. Honestly, it's such a relief she's finally offering to share. Humiliation burned my cheeks as whispers rippled through the crowd. My coworkers shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Friends stared at me with pity, unsure how to help. The home I'd proudly purchased was suddenly reduced to a selfish extravagance, something I'd greedily hoarded instead of shared. But as deeply humiliating as it was, it only hardened my resolve. Trish had overplayed her hand, assuming I'd quietly fold. She clearly didn't know the woman I'd become, or just how badly she'd miscalculated. I took a steadying breath, forcing a smile that felt like shattered glass. Maybe we should discuss this privately later? Oh, Erica, Trish interrupted brightly. We're family. What's there to discuss privately? Unless you've changed your mind about helping us in front of everyone here? Gasps punctuated the silence. My mother stared at me with thinly veiled disappointment. Erica, don't embarrass your sister. Embarrass her? My blood boiled at the absurdity. Trish had ambushed me, twisted reality, and somehow I was the one causing embarrassment? Trish turned dramatically toward the guests, sighing loudly. I'm sorry, everyone. Erica must be feeling overwhelmed. She's not used to thinking about others. I flinched as the cutting remark hit home. Decades of resentment surged to the surface. This wasn't just about my home, it was about every dismissal, every overlooked success, every moment I'd swallowed my pride for her comfort. No, I said, my voice sharper than I'd intended, drawing startled looks. What I'm overwhelmed by is you announcing decisions about my home without even asking me. An uneasy hush settled. My father shook his head, eyes heavy with disappointment. Really, Erica? We raised you better than this. I swallowed hard, refusing to let them break me again. My gaze swept the room, catching supportive glances from colleagues who recognized exactly what was happening. It gave me courage. Before I could respond, my mother placed a gentle hand on Trish's shoulder, speaking softly but loudly enough for everyone to hear. I'm so sorry, dear. Erica's always struggled with generosity. Perhaps she'll come around when she's had time to think. The humiliation was almost too much. Rage surged, but alongside it, a steely determination formed inside me. They wanted a public display? Fine. I'd give them exactly that. But not the one they expected. You're right, I said firmly, forcing calm. Let's clear this up right now. Trish looked momentarily startled, clearly unprepared for me to fight back. Good. I stepped forward, meeting her eyes directly. You need help, and family matters, so yes, let's help you. She visibly relaxed, smiling smugly as if she'd won, not sensing the trap I'd set. See, Erica? Was that so hard? I smiled sweetly back. Not at all. In fact, I have the perfect solution, one that respects everyone. Her expression faltered slightly, sensing danger but unsure what was coming. She'd miscalculated badly, and I felt the intoxicating rush of finally holding power over a situation she'd so carefully orchestrated. Because what Trish didn't know was that I had a card left to play. A secret I'd kept hidden for months, waiting for the right moment. And now she'd forced my hand. The next few minutes would be painful, devastating even, but they'd also be undeniably satisfying. And as I stood facing my sister, her arrogant certainty already crumbling, I realized something extraordinary. For the first time in my life, I was finally being seen. I turned toward my home office, feeling every eye burn into my back. My heart raced, adrenaline surging through me as I retrieved the thick leather-bound folder I'd hidden away weeks ago, carefully planning when, or if, I'd ever reveal its contents. Trish's stunt had forced my hand earlier than expected, but I felt no hesitation now. Returning to the living room, folder clutched confidently under my arm, I felt strangely calm despite the chaos. Trish's smug expression flickered uncertainly, her intuition sensing that the dynamic had shifted. Matt stood by quietly, his face red with embarrassment, clearly wishing he were anywhere else. Erica, honey, what are you doing? My mother asked cautiously, sensing something brewing beneath the surface. For once her voice held real curiosity, maybe even nervousness. I smiled calmly. placing the folder deliberately on the coffee table, the thud echoing through the silent room. "Solving Trish's problem," I said firmly, meeting my sister's eyes. "After all, family helps family, right?" Trish stared at the folder, clearly unsure what game I was playing. Her fingers fidgeted nervously, betraying the confidence she'd worn moments ago. "What's this, Erica?" I opened the folder slowly, drawing out the documents one by one. "These," I began calmly, "are papers relating to your mortgage, your debts, and your financial situation. Everything you've been hiding." A collective gasp swept the room. Trish's face paled, eyes widening in horror. How did you? Did you think nobody would find out how serious things really were?" I interrupted quietly. "Or did you assume I'd just quietly give in once you made it my problem?" My mother's hand flew to her chest dramatically. "Erica, this is incredibly inappropriate. We're in front of guests." "Oh, you had no problem embarrassing me publicly," I shot back icily, the years of pent-up resentment finally breaking free. "You made this about me in front of everyone. Now we finish it in front of everyone." Trish sank slowly into the nearest chair, her eyes darting helplessly toward Matt, who stared back at her in shock. You knew all this?" Matt demanded hoarsely. "You told me it wasn't that bad, Trish." She flinched visibly, cornered, exposed. "I didn't want to worry you," she stammered, weakly attempting damage control. "You didn't mind worrying me," I snapped. "You thought humiliating me publicly was better than simply asking me privately for help." She said nothing, her silence speaking volumes. My heart pounded fiercely, satisfaction warring with lingering sadness that it had come to this. "Well," I said, steadying myself, "I've done exactly what you wanted, Trish. I've helped you." I pushed forward a carefully prepared legal document from the folder. 2 weeks ago I quietly purchased your mortgage from the bank. They were about to foreclose, but now I own your house." A stunned silence fell. My father's eyes widened, mouth agape. "You bought her mortgage?" "Yes," I replied, voice calm yet sharp with authority. "You were right. Family helps family. So instead of moving into my house, you'll simply pay rent to me. I've worked out a fair monthly amount that's manageable for you both." Trish stared at me, horrified. "Pay rent? To you?" "Exactly," I said firmly. "You keep your home and I keep mine. A fair arrangement, don't you think?" But you planned this?" she choked out. "Exactly like you planned to ambush me today," I replied calmly, unyielding. "The difference is, my plan protects both our dignity, something you conveniently ignored." My mother stood abruptly, visibly trembling. "This is disgraceful, Erica. Turning family into business. It's heartless." I met her gaze squarely, years of built-up frustration finally releasing. "No, Mom. What's heartless is manipulating family, publicly humiliating me, and using my success as a weapon against me. I'm tired of my kindness being mistaken for weakness." Trish sat frozen, her humiliation finally mirroring mine. My coworkers exchanged impressed glances, no longer awkward or embarrassed, but openly supportive. For the first time I was no longer invisible, no longer easy to dismiss. "I refuse," Trish whispered bitterly, defiance flickering weakly in her eyes. "You don't have that option," I answered softly but firmly, leaning forward to meet her eyes. "You gambled with my dignity and lost. Now I'm taking control back, on my terms." She flinched, finally understanding how deeply she'd miscalculated. Around me, murmurs of approval spread softly through the crowd, replacing the previous embarrassment with vindication. The power had shifted irreversibly and the family's golden girl had finally fallen. As the truth sank in, Trish looked away, defeated, humiliated. But for once I felt no sympathy. After decades of swallowing my pride, accepting invisibility, and enduring casual dismissals, revenge felt more satisfying than I'd ever imagined. Just as I thought the moment couldn't feel more surreal, my phone rang sharply, breaking the stunned silence. Everyone turned as I fumbled to silence it, embarrassed. But when I saw the caller ID, my heart leapt into my throat. It was Lucas Adams, the CEO of my company, someone who never called without a reason. A very big reason. "Excuse me," I murmured, stepping into the quiet of the kitchen, my heart hammering with anticipation. "Erica." Lucas's voice was calm yet carried an excitement he rarely showed. "I'm sorry to disturb your party, but I couldn't wait to deliver the news myself. The board just unanimously approved your proposal. You're officially heading the new global tech division." For a moment I couldn't breathe. This was the biggest achievement of my career. The final, undeniable proof that everything I'd worked for had paid off. My eyes stung with unexpected tears of relief and triumph. "Thank you," I whispered, voice cracking. "You have no idea how much this means." "You earned it," Lucas said warmly. "Celebrate tonight. You've more than earned that too." I hung up slowly, savoring the validation washing over me. As I turned back toward the living room, I noticed Trish lingering awkwardly near the doorway, her eyes wide and confused, clearly having overheard. "What was that about?" she asked, a hint of suspicion mingling with defeat in her voice. I smiled calmly, strength renewed by my CEO's call. "Just more proof that I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, Trish, whether you choose to recognize it or not." She stood silent, realizing she'd just witnessed her sister's ultimate validation, at precisely the moment of her own public humiliation. The contrast couldn't have been clearer, or more painful, and I saw her visibly shrink, years of entitlement deflating rapidly. Returning to the living room felt like stepping back onto a stage after a standing ovation. Every eye was on me, some in admiration, others in envy, but none of them dismissing me anymore. My mother looked up, eyebrows raised cautiously. "Everything all right?" "Better than all right," I replied, allowing myself a moment of unguarded pride. "I've just been named head of a major global division at my firm." The reaction was instantaneous. My coworkers applauded enthusiastically, their faces beaming. Friends cheered loudly, genuine happiness evident. Even some of the family friends who'd sided with Trish looked sheepish, quickly joining the applause, eager to be on the right side of my success. But my parents remained silent, visibly stunned. My father's face reddened slightly, struggling to reconcile his lifelong skepticism about my career with this undeniable proof. My mother shifted uncomfortably, finally forced to confront the painful truth she'd ignored for decades. I'd succeeded spectacularly, without their support. Trish sank deeper into her chair, her humiliation amplified tenfold by my news. She'd carefully staged tonight to assert dominance, only to have it spectacularly implode. Her earlier arrogance now seemed painfully absurd. "So," I continued softly, addressing my family directly, "you wanted everyone here tonight to witness how family helps family? Well, consider this my help. I'll protect your dignity, your home. But my boundaries, my life, will never again be your playground." A long silence settled over the room. Finally, my father cleared his throat, speaking with difficulty. "Well done, Erica." Those 3 simple words I'd yearned to hear my entire life, almost broke me, but they felt strangely hollow now, coming only after undeniable public proof of my worth. "Thanks, Dad," I replied simply, nodding slowly, "but I stopped needing that validation years ago." I turned away from them, addressing my guests warmly, confidently. "Now, let's truly celebrate. Tonight isn't just about a house or a promotion, it's about finally knowing exactly who I am." Cheers erupted again, louder, freer, this time with genuine joy. I saw clearly now who truly supported me, who celebrated my success sincerely, and who had merely tolerated me until now. The battle I'd dreaded all my life had ended, not with surrender or compromise, but with a stunning, unexpected victory. For the first time I felt genuinely free. My family had finally seen me for who I truly was, even if it was forced by circumstance rather than genuine desire. As the party continued around me, the weight I'd carried since childhood slowly lifted. I'd proven something tonight, not just to Trish or my parents or even my friends, but most importantly to myself. My voice quiet but unwavering, I whispered softly to no one but myself. "You did it, Erica. You really did it." As the evening wound down, guests slowly began filtering out, some with encouraging smiles and supportive hugs, others casting curious glances toward Trish and my parents as they quietly left the house. Trish remained seated, isolated in her shameful silence, unable to lift her gaze from the documents still scattered on the table. My mother finally stood, visibly shaken but struggling to maintain dignity. She looked directly at me, eyes watery with frustration and disbelief. "Erica, was humiliating your sister in front of everyone truly necessary?" A wave of exhaustion washed over me. Even now, after everything, she still couldn't see clearly. But this time, her guilt had lost its power over me. "Mom," I responded calmly, holding her gaze firmly, "Trish humiliated herself. She manipulated this entire evening. I simply refused to allow it." My father's jaw tightened, clearly caught between loyalty to my mother and the undeniable truth of my words. "Erica, There's a better way to handle family matters. Exactly, I replied firmly, refusing to yield even an inch. Privately, respectfully, two things Trish conveniently forgot tonight. Trish finally looked up, eyes swollen from the tears she was barely holding back. You could have just helped me quietly, she whispered bitterly. I shook my head softly, refusing to allow her victimhood narrative to continue unchecked. No, Trish, you forced this confrontation. You counted on my embarrassment to get what you wanted, but you underestimated me. This isn't high school anymore. I won't quietly disappear just because it's easier for you. Trish's shoulders slumped in defeat, the truth finally penetrating. For once, she had no easy retort, no manipulative comment left to wield. Matt gently touched her arm, silently urging her to stand. We should go, he murmured quietly. She nodded slowly, rising with a dignity I hadn't expected. At the doorway, she turned hesitantly. Erica, I'm sorry, she whispered softly, her voice barely audible. It was the first genuine apology she'd ever offered me, and for a moment the lingering anger softened slightly, but not completely. Forgiveness would take longer, and it would come on my terms, not hers. Thank you, I replied simply, nodding once, clearly signaling this wasn't reconciliation, just recognition. As they left, my mother paused at the doorway, clearly conflicted, searching for words. You always were stubborn, Erica. I guess tonight proved that. I held her gaze steadily, voice gentle but firm. I prefer determined, Mom. Determined to have the respect I've always deserved. She gave a short nod, acknowledging the shift, even if reluctantly, before following my father out the door. Finally alone, I sank into a chair, the adrenaline and anger giving way to relief. The evening had taken a heavy toll, but it had also granted me something precious and new: clarity. I'd finally broken free from their expectations, their dismissals, their manipulation. I'd stood firm, protecting the life I'd carefully built. My phone buzzed softly again. A text from Lucas appeared. Congratulations again. Proud to have you leading the team. Celebrate yourself. You deserve it. I smiled softly, genuine warmth spreading through me. Lucas's words carried more sincerity than my own family's hollow congratulations ever had. This was my real family, the people who celebrated and supported me unconditionally. Glancing around at the scattered remnants of the party, I realized I'd reclaimed my home in the truest sense. It wasn't just bricks and mortar anymore. It was proof of the dignity I'd fought for, the self-worth I'd discovered in standing my ground. The night air felt fresher, the silence peaceful rather than oppressive. I'd finally irrevocably set boundaries my family could no longer ignore. And strangely enough, amid the chaos and emotional turmoil, I'd found something I never expected: true peace. I rose slowly, walking to the window overlooking my beautiful yard, stars glittering calmly overhead. Tomorrow, a new chapter began, one defined on my own terms, with clear, firm boundaries that no one could breach. And as I stood quietly savoring that thought, I whispered softly into the calm of my new life. Welcome home, Erica. You finally made it. A few weeks later, I invited a small group of close friends and colleagues over. Not for an elaborate housewarming, but for a simple, heartfelt celebration of what I'd come to realize mattered most: genuine support and respect from people who truly understood me. The evening was everything my family gatherings never had been. Warm, genuine, relaxed. No hidden agendas, no undercurrents of manipulation. Just laughter and honest conversation filling the spaces of my home. Lucas brought a bottle of champagne, proudly leading a toast to my new promotion. Sarah, my assistant turned best friend, baked a cake with the words, "To Erica, who finally sees herself the way we always have." As I laughed and accepted congratulations, a powerful warmth blossomed inside me. This was what family should feel like. Not obligations and resentment, but genuine joy in each other's accomplishments. Later, sitting with Sarah on the back porch, watching the sun set softly over the yard, she turned toward me, a curious look in her eyes. Erica, I've always wondered, why did you never fight back sooner? You endured so much. Her question hit home, making me pause, my thoughts drifting to all those quiet moments of swallowing hurt, sacrificing peace for acceptance that never came. Honestly, I admitted softly, I was afraid of losing whatever scraps of approval they might offer. Sarah squeezed my hand gently, a comforting gesture I'd rarely experienced before. Well, I'm glad you finally saw how much more you deserve. Looking around, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, my chosen family, I realized how true her words were. For years I'd chased my biological family's approval, never seeing that the respect I desperately sought was already right in front of me, in friends like Sarah, colleagues like Lucas, people who valued me without needing proof or persuasion. The night passed comfortably, without tension or drama. Conversations flowed easily, laughter echoed warmly, and for once I wasn't anxiously watching for criticism or bracing for manipulation. Instead, I simply enjoyed the peace of being genuinely understood. As guests began leaving, Lucas stopped by my side, his smile sincere. "Erica, what you did, standing your ground like that, was incredibly brave. You inspired a lot of us." The praise felt genuine, soothing a lingering wound inside me. "Thank you," I replied softly, gratitude swelling beyond words. "It means more coming from you than you'll ever know." He smiled warmly, nodding once, his voice steady with conviction. "Never let anyone make you feel small again. You've earned your place, own it fully." Later, after everyone had gone, I sat quietly, thinking about the stark contrast between tonight and the humiliating chaos of my original housewarming. My chosen family had reminded me of something vital. Real love, real respect, came freely, without strings attached or conditions imposed. My phone buzzed suddenly, a message from Trish. My heart tightened instinctively. I hesitated before opening it, wondering if more manipulation awaited. But her message surprised me. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Erica, but thank you for helping us anyway. I'll do better, I promise." The words didn't heal every wound, nor erase decades of resentment. But they felt genuine, maybe the first sincere thing she'd ever said to me. And maybe eventually we could rebuild something healthier. On my terms this time. I placed the phone down, sighing deeply, the weight lifting further. Tonight had been a revelation. The respect and belonging I'd spent a lifetime chasing had always been mine to claim, just not where I'd expected to find it. Now, standing alone in the gentle silence of my beautiful home, gratitude filled every corner. I'd finally chosen my family, finally chosen myself, and that choice had given me back my dignity, my voice, and my peace. And for the first time, as the night closed quietly around me, I knew without question I belonged exactly where I was, surrounded by people who truly saw me, respected me, and loved me just as I was. In the weeks following, life settled into a rhythm I'd never experienced before. Peaceful, confident, secure. Every day walking through the rooms of my home, I felt the difference clearly. It was more than just comfort. It was an unshakable sense of control, the certainty that no one could invade my space or diminish my achievements ever again. My therapist, someone I'd started seeing to untangle years of family-induced anxiety, described it perfectly. "Boundaries aren't walls, Erica. They're how you keep the best parts of yourself safe." I carried those words everywhere, using them as reminders each time old patterns tried to resurface. When my mother texted passive-aggressively about missing family dinners, or when Trish hinted at needing more help with unexpected bills, I responded with calm clarity rather than guilt-driven panic. "No," I'd say simply, without elaborate apologies or excuses. "That doesn't work for me." The phrase was deceptively powerful. No arguments, no manipulation, just clear, simple honesty. At first my family struggled, baffled by this new Erica who refused to be guilt-tripped or pressured, but slowly even they began to accept it. Phone calls grew shorter but more respectful, texts became less demanding and occasionally even polite. Boundaries, it turned out, forced respect, even if reluctantly. Trish and Matt settled into their new arrangement, paying rent on time, carefully rebuilding their financial stability. It wasn't always comfortable, and Trish still seemed awkward when our paths crossed, but something fundamental had shifted. She no longer expected my help as her right. Now, it was recognized as kindness, a generosity freely given rather than demanded. Surprisingly, it improved our relationship, or at least created space for one to eventually exist. Without constant resentment and hidden expectations, our interactions slowly grew more honest, less toxic. There were no grand reconciliations, but small, genuine moments started appearing. A polite thank you, a respectful nod, even occasional genuine laughter during brief visits. One afternoon, Matt stopped by to drop off the rent check personally. Standing awkwardly in my doorway, he cleared his throat. "Erica, I just wanted to say, I'm truly sorry for what happened. I should have stepped in sooner." His sincerity touched me. "Thanks, Matt," I replied gently. "I appreciate you saying that." "Trish is trying," he added softly. "She's different now. This taught her something important." "I hope so," I said, honestly meaning it. We both learned a lot. That brief exchange left me strangely hopeful. Maybe in time genuine connections could be rebuilt, not on obligation or manipulation but on respect and boundaries clearly defined. My professional life flourished more than ever. Heading the global tech division filled my days with meaningful challenges and satisfying victories. Lucas became a steady mentor, someone whose quiet respect and unwavering support gave me strength whenever doubt resurfaced. Colleagues treated me differently, more respectfully, warmly. I'd become someone they admired not just for my career success, but for my courage in setting boundaries publicly, a rare strength they openly envied. I realized I'd set an example without even intending to, becoming proof that dignity and kindness could coexist without sacrificing either. My home became a true sanctuary, the physical symbol of this newfound confidence. I added personal touches I'd previously denied myself. Bright artwork, lush plants, cozy corners designed purely for my enjoyment. Each addition was a quiet statement. This is mine, built by me, for me. One evening, standing alone in the quiet peace of my favorite room, a cozy sunroom overlooking the garden, I realized fully just how far I'd come. Gone was the anxious woman who'd spent decades desperately seeking approval. In her place stood someone calm, confident, deeply secure in her worth. It wasn't just revenge or pride driving me now, it was genuine self-respect, the profound realization that I'd built a life truly worth protecting. As the sunset painted the sky in gentle shades of orange and purple, I allowed myself a deep, contented sigh. I finally understood the power of boundaries, not barriers, but protection for the life I'd worked so hard to build. Smiling quietly to myself, I whispered softly into the fading light, "You deserve this, Erica. You've earned every bit of this peace." With stability finally established, I turned my attention outward, using the strength I'd gained not just to protect myself but to empower others. I'd built my success in spite of my family's doubt, but now it was time to shape my legacy beyond proving people wrong. It was about proving something right. I began mentoring younger women in tech, eager to provide the kind of support and encouragement I'd rarely received. Every session felt deeply personal. Their struggles echoed my own past fears: imposter syndrome, self-doubt, the painful sting of underestimation. One evening, after wrapping up a mentoring session, a young developer named Caitlin approached me hesitantly. "Erica, do you ever wonder if it gets easier, dealing with family expectations, proving yourself?" I smiled softly, recognizing myself clearly in her anxious gaze. "Honestly, it doesn't necessarily get easier, but you get stronger. Eventually, their voices matter less, because yours becomes louder." Her eyes brightened with cautious hope. "Really?" "Absolutely," I replied firmly, meeting her gaze with warmth and confidence. "You decide your worth, no one else." The words resonated deeply within me, a quiet confirmation of how far I'd truly come. I wasn't just helping others, I was reaffirming my own growth, building something powerful and meaningful that extended far beyond my family's limited view. Around that time, I started a scholarship fund at MIT specifically aimed at young women from backgrounds like mine, bright minds who struggled silently beneath family neglect, poverty, or emotional invisibility. Each scholarship awarded felt like reclaiming a small piece of my own past, giving someone else the validation and support I once desperately needed. Lucas surprised me by matching my initial funding, turning it into something even bigger. "You've inspired me," he admitted one afternoon, smiling warmly. "Your courage made me want to do more." The ripple effect felt incredible. My painful journey, transformed into something genuinely meaningful, created a legacy I could finally feel proud of. Even my family eventually acknowledged my community work. One evening, I got a surprising text from my mother. "Erica, I saw your scholarship announcement in the paper. Very impressive." It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was something, a recognition, at least partially sincere. And for the first time it didn't fill me with desperate longing or bitter frustration. Instead, I smiled briefly, replied politely, and moved on, knowing my worth no longer depended on her fleeting approval. Meanwhile, Trish's life slowly stabilized under the arrangement I'd created. Surprisingly, she began reaching out occasionally. careful, respectful texts asking for advice, something previously unimaginable. I answered kindly, with clear boundaries. For the first time it felt healthy, not draining or frustrating. Progress was small, fragile, but undeniably real. One afternoon, while visiting MIT to speak at an alumni event, I paused outside my old dorm room. The faded door, covered in graffiti and youthful dreams, stood as a silent testament to how much I'd overcome, how far I'd come. In that quiet moment, I felt profound gratitude, both for the struggles that had shaped me and the strength I'd discovered in fighting through them. I'd spent decades driven by the fierce determination to prove my family wrong, but somewhere along the way, that motivation had shifted. It was no longer revenge guiding me forward, but a desire to prove something far more powerful, that dignity, independence, and strength could thrive, even when denied at every turn. As I left campus that day, stepping confidently into the sunlight, I knew my legacy wasn't just success or wealth or even respect, it was resilience. My journey was proof that no matter how invisible you felt, no matter how painful the road, there was power and purpose in defining your own story. That night, looking at my reflection in the mirror, I saw not just Erica, the overlooked sister or the determined tech executive, but Erica, someone who mattered, someone whose strength had shaped something truly beautiful from her struggles. And quietly, proudly, I whispered to myself, "You did it, and no one can ever take this away." Months passed, and my life became a comfortable blend of purposeful work, supportive friendships, and genuine inner peace. My journey, filled with battles I never imagined winning, had finally reached a point of calm self-assurance. But one evening, sitting quietly in my garden as twilight descended, I realized something profound. I had finally stopped waiting for validation. I had validated myself, and that was enough. I thought back to every step that had brought me here, the sacrifices, humiliations, triumphs, and felt nothing but quiet gratitude. Not gratitude for the pain itself, but for the strength I'd found buried beneath it, waiting patiently until I was ready to claim it. My family's approval no longer held power over me, and remarkably, that realization didn't bring bitterness. Instead, it brought a gentle sense of closure. Their limitations no longer defined my worth. My success no longer needed their acknowledgement. I'd freed myself not just from their expectations but from my own self-doubt, finally recognizing my worth without condition. One afternoon, Trish invited me for coffee, something we hadn't done in years. Sitting across from each other, she fidgeted nervously with her cup before finally speaking. "Erica, I'm really sorry for everything I put you through. I've thought a lot about it, and honestly, you deserved better from me." The apology startled me with its sincerity, but what shocked me more was my response. Gentle forgiveness, freely given. "Thank you, Trish. I know it wasn't easy to say that." She exhaled softly, relief evident in her expression. "I admire you," she admitted hesitantly, eyes glistening slightly. "I always have, even when I pretended otherwise. You're stronger than I ever could have imagined." Her words warmed me deeply, not because I needed them, but because they represented something genuine, a bridge rebuilt slowly, honestly, without expectations. Our relationship wasn't magically repaired in that moment, but it was something new, healthy, respectful, and real. Over time, my parents' interactions softened too. No grand gestures, no heartfelt apologies, but a gradual shift toward respect. When we spoke, conversations remained short but courteous, no longer carrying the weight of guilt or manipulation. Boundaries, it seemed, had done exactly what I'd hoped, given us space to heal, to respect one another from a safe distance. But my truest victory wasn't measured by repaired relationships or apologies, it was internal. I'd learned to trust myself, respect my instincts, and value my own voice above all others. My success now felt complete, not just financially or professionally, but emotionally, spiritually, wholly. As I watched the evening deepen into peaceful darkness that night, a quiet contentment settled deep within me. My life was finally my own, crafted intentionally, carefully, respectfully. The sanctuary I'd built, both my home and my heart, was protected by boundaries and filled with genuine self-love. I knew now that true validation didn't come from family, achievements, or praise. It came from the quiet certainty of knowing exactly who I was and valuing myself without condition. That realization brought a peace more profound than I'd ever imagined possible. Looking upward at the stars beginning to sparkle softly, I smiled gently, gratitude filling every breath. "Thank you," I whispered quietly, not to anyone else, but purely to myself, for having the courage to finally stand firm, for reclaiming my dignity, my worth, my life. In that quiet, perfect moment, the past ceased to hold pain, the future no longer inspired anxiety. I was here, fully, calmly at peace. And for the first time ever, I knew, without any doubt, I had truly made it home. Have you ever felt like nothing you achieved was enough? Like your family's expectations overshadowed your own dreams? If you've experienced struggles with setting boundaries or reclaiming your self-worth, I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. You're not alone. If my journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that it's okay to define success on their own terms. Remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's how you protect the best parts of yourself and ensure your dignity stays intact. Thank you for joining me on this deeply personal journey. Until next time, never forget, you deserve peace, respect, and happiness, exactly as you are.